Okay, so lesson 423 is kind of a fun one. Association is not causation. This is a huge deal. Let's pretend we knew someone and her name was Becky, and let's say Becky had been in 23 fender benders, like small car accidents, right? And we would say, holy smokes, Becky, you caused so many accidents, right? But what if it turns out Becky is 14 years old and has never driven a car? So she's actually not causing the accidents, but she is associated with them, if that makes sense, right? We wouldn't want to drive with Becky for fear of what might happen, but we don't necessarily blame her for what's happening. So that's really important to understand, that association, and just because two things seem to go together, that does not mean that one thing is causing the other. And people have a difficult time in the real world sort of noticing the difference, and it's just so easy to want to blame something and say it's a cause of it, when really they just sort of move together. So that's the ultimate goal of this. So there is a little bit of review first. Again, it's a great question that has to do with residuals and residual plots, but we'll get into that association and causation thing. A study found that the more hours students spent on activities outside of school, the higher their grades tended to be. Does that mean if you sign up for more activities, your grades will go up? Well, probably the kind of people that are more active are probably the kind of people who care more about their grades, right? If you don't care about your grades, maybe you're the kind of kid that sits at home and does nothing all day. Certainly not watching this video. Anyway, another study found a link between how often you brush your teeth and a reduction in heart disease. Does that mean if you brush your teeth twice a day, your heart will be healthier? Well, think about it. Is your heart like, oh boy, really working the gums today? I'm not gonna have a heart attack today. More than likely, this kind of person that brushes their teeth takes care of themselves and is less likely to have heart disease. Again, they're not necessarily causing it just because they're associated. So as a consumer of statistical information, you need to be aware of the difference between association and causation. Today's investigation will explore the difference. And I'll tell you this right now. In the real world, this is a big deal. If you're going to be like an educated voter, it's an easy trick for a politician or a political group to blame something when they in fact are just associated. So I would just say guard yourself against that. This is a good skill beyond the math classroom, I promise. So fire hoses come in different diameters. How far the hose can throw water depends on the diameter of the hose. The Smallville Fire Department collected data about their fire hoses. The residual plot for the data is shown at right. So something should jump out about this data immediately. So what does the residual plot tell you about the LSRL model of the fire hose? Well, I would say I see a pattern. So first of all, they shouldn't be using a line in the first place, right? I see a distinct pattern there. So to determine the worst prediction made by the LSRL, the worst prediction looks like this one was about 25 away. That was pretty close, about 21 away, but 3.5, it looks like the worst one. So how different was the worst prediction from what was actually observed? Well, it looks like the 3.5 inch hose shoots water 24 feet shorter than we predict. Less than prediction. Well, if you think about that, if you're trying to put my house out, I would probably prefer that the water hose reach the fire. So this is a big problem. Then again, I don't want you to think it's no big deal if it shoots 21 feet further. I mean, maybe you're knocking down walls instead of putting out fires at that point. So this could also be its own problem. Probably the best thing is you get an accurate prediction. So make a conjecture about what the original scatter plot should have looked like and sketch it. So here's probably what it looked like originally. Again, the X is the same. So this is our hose diameter. Y should have been the distance, distance in feet of the water that gets shot out. And I think it looks something like this, right? We under-predicted at the beginning, then we over-predicted, and then we under-predicted again. So hopefully we're following that residual plot. So the mayor of Smallville finds the following graph in the town's annual financial report. Describe the association, if any, in the scatter plot. Well, it's positive, I would say. The more firefighters, the more money and damage that is done. The mayor immediately orders the fire department to send fewer firefighters to each fire so there's less damage, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, if there's less firefighters, so there's less damage. So let's move on. No, I mean, of course, saying it jokingly, right? The joke being that the mayor doesn't understand that, you know, if it's a little dumpster fire in the backyard, you only send 1 or 2 firemen and there's very little damage. However, if it's a towering inferno of a 15 floor building, you need a bunch of firemen and there will be a bunch of damage, right? So again, the concept that association is not causation. Just because there's a lot of firefighters associated with a lot of damage, that doesn't mean that the firefighters are causing the damage. Now, that also doesn't mean that they're not. I mean, for all we know, the firefighters in this town, you know, there's a small dumpster fire, but before they put the dumpster fire out, maybe they take their axe, knock down the door, take out a couple of walls, destroy the garage, and then go put the dumpster fire out. I mean, that's a possibility too, as unlikely as that is. So we can't infer too much from any of these without knowing more about it. A dietitian studying the benefits of eating spinach surveyed a large sample of individuals. She recorded the amount of spinach they ate and their physical strength. The dietitian found the spinach eaters to be much stronger than the non-spinach eaters. The next day, the headline was, "Popeye was right, eating spinach makes you stronger." A couple things. First of all, I don't even know if you people know who Popeye is anymore. Google it if you don't. It was an old cartoon. He would eat spinach and used it essentially as steroids. So do you agree with the newspaper? Well, I would say no. Probably the people that eat healthy also exercise, and that's what makes them strong, right? That's probably what's going on. So more than likely, the spinach is associated with the strength. It's not causing the strength. Says the dietitian correctly found an association. What could explain this association other than spinach makes you stronger? Like we said, if you care to eat healthy, then maybe you care to exercise as well. We'll keep going. There's a hidden variable that was not part of the study. The size of the fire in problem 481 was a lurking variable. The amount of people work out was a lurking variable, or exercise was a lurking variable in the last problem, 482. A medical study found a strong link between the number of hours high school students wear a helmet and the number of concussions. However, it's unlikely that wearing helmets causes head injuries. Can you think of a lurking variable? Well, yeah, how about the activities that they were doing, right? If you're wearing a helmet, you're probably skateboarding or playing football or riding a motorcycle, and you're more likely to get a concussion. It's rare that we put our helmets up and buckle up for safety when we do math. And it's rare that we get a concussion unless, unfortunately, we're banging our head against a desk. But I think you get my point. So 484, this one hits close to home. Got the gray hair. Not quite a senior citizen yet. Definitely have the hearing loss. I don't eat prunes often. Long-term noise exposure, that definitely happened. False teeth, they're all mine as of right now. Anyways, too many of these describe me than they should. So a web of associated variables like the one below can get complex and be difficult to unravel. Consider a medical study focused on hearing loss. It may associate variables like eating prunes to hearing loss as strongly as it associates an actual cause like long-term noise exposure to hearing loss, right? So eating prunes doesn't necessarily cause hearing loss. That's just an association, but long-term noise exposure does cause hearing loss. Having false teeth doesn't cause hearing loss. They're just associated. And having gray hair doesn't necessarily cause hearing loss either, although there is a strong association, I think, for sure. But being a senior citizen does cause gray hair. It does cause I don't know that it causes long-term noise exposure. I was pretty well deaf by the age I was early 20s. Senior citizen does often have a lot to do with false teeth and eating prunes. Not there yet, exactly. So here are some newspaper headlines from actual observation studies. Each of them found an association. Some even imply a cause and effect relationship. Determine at least one plausible lurking variable. So calcium in the diet may cut risk for some cancer study finds. So who knows? I mean, if you're still drinking milk or getting a lot of calcium, you're probably eating healthy. Maybe you're not smoking, and that probably has something to do with you not having cancer either. Study, family time declines as web use booms. All right, well, that presuppose. I mean, right? Everyone's on the internet now, and no one talks to their family. But before the internet, I didn't talk to my family because I was watching TV or maybe reading a book. Not me. Maybe playing video games, perhaps. But there's probably always been a decent decline in family time, and it's not necessarily because of the internet. It could have been any other distraction after that. Chocolate is linked to depression, right? So if you eat chocolate, you'll be depressed. Or who knows? Maybe people that are depressed eat chocolate. So that might be the issue there. Study: kids who were spanked have lower IQs. I honestly don't even really want to address this one. There's a lot going on with this, and I'm going to put this on YouTube, and I'm not super interested in being on CNN one day because a math teacher in Escalon said something about kids getting spanked. A lack of health insurance kills 45,000 a year. You know, I mean, there's a lot of potential things going on again, and I know the health insurance thing is a big political issue right now, and again, I'd like to steer clear of it, so I'll leave these last two to your own imagination for you to come up for a reason why kids who have getting spanked have lower IQs, and for the fact that a lack of health insurance kills 45,000 a year. All right, so come up with your own original news headlines. The first sentence should contain a reasonable link between two variables. The second statement should be a clear misrepresentation of the link. The two examples are given. So, facial tissue linked to colds and flu. Surgeon General calls for a shift to paper towels. I guess, anyway. Well, this does it for it. I don't really see what we're supposed to do here, but bathing suits tied to sunburn. Doctors recommend swimming naked. I mean, obviously, the thought here would be that it's being out in the sun, not whether or not you wear a bathing suit that's causing the sunburn. And here, obviously, the thought being it's not you're using the paper towel or the tissue because you're sick already. You're not sick because you're using a paper towel or a tissue. I should just delete this last part off. Anyway, that's 423.